Welcome to the Freedom Project podcast. I'm Tom Foxley, and this is where we talk about what it really takes to build elite mental fitness, the kind that lets you perform at your best, push your limits, and create real freedom in your life and business. There's this strange paradox when it comes to courage. Some of the toughest, most disciplined people on the planet, the ones who charge into danger without any hesitation, can still find themselves stuck in their comfort zone. Not in the way you'd expect, but in a way that keeps them from creating the life they actually want. Let me tell you a story. There was a rifle in the background of this Zoom call, and the guy on the other end wore a military uniform. His connection was super patchy, and his name was Art. He was a German Special Forces officer calling in from Afghanistan, and that explained why he'd cancelled our last two calls. As if reading my mind, he said, "Oh yeah, I should let you know. I'm in between missions, but on a call right now. If there's contact with the enemy or any kind of emergencies, I'm going to have to leave." And completely fair enough. Over the next 45 minutes, Art told me something surprising. Despite having solid proof he was tough, combat deployment, elite training, high-stake operations, he knew he was stuck in his comfort zone, but not in the way most people think. For years, he had been desperate to leave the military and start his next chapter, but he hadn't. And it wasn't because he lacked courage, obviously. It was because the unknown felt riskier than the familiar struggle. It sounds paradoxical. How could someone who ran towards danger hesitate to step into civilian life? But there's a psychological explanation. It's called the status quo bias. Research by Samuelson and Zeckhauster shows that people tend to stick with what they know, even when change is in their best interest. The pain you know feels safer than the uncertainty you don't know. Art had been trained to make life or death decisions under fire. He could handle extreme discomfort, and yet when it came to walking away from the military, from the identity that had shaped him, from the mission that had defined his purpose, he hesitated. And he wasn't alone. Ernest Shackleton, the legendary explorer, faced exactly the same struggle. During the Endurance expedition, Shackleton led his men through unimaginable hardship, drifting on ice for months, surviving on these dwindling rations, and navigating open seas in a lifeboat. He thrived in crisis. But once they were safe, once survival mode was no longer needed, he floundered. He struggled to find meaning in ordinary life, and Art was no different. He was fearless in combat, but when it came to building his future, making decisions without orders, forging his own path, he was stuck. I remember him saying, "I know how to train my body, but I don't know how to train my mind." And he had searched everywhere. Podcasts, books, even within the Special Forces community and their deep pool of psychologists. But even the German military didn't have a clear methodology for training mental fitness like he wanted. And that's what led him to this call. I knew he could handle discomfort, so I pushed deeper than usual. We peeled back layers until he finally saw what had been holding him back. I remember the long silence, the look of recognition in his eyes, and then he said, "Well, shit." And he signed up instantly. 3 years later, we jumped on another Zoom call, another patchy connection, but this time he wasn't in Afghanistan. He was in Sri Lanka. He looked well rested. He was smiling freely, and understandable considering how his life now looked. He would wake up early, surf world-class waves, spend mornings with his wife and toddler, and do deep, fulfilling work for around about 3 hours, like he was prepping for a TEDx talk at the time. And then he would spend the rest of the day with his family. He was free. He was making more money than he had ever done in the military too. And most importantly, he was fulfilled. Even special forces operators can lack true mental fitness. You can push yourself to extremes. You can handle hardship. But that doesn't mean you aren't stuck in your comfort zone. That doesn't mean you're building a life you love. Willpower wasn't enough to create the life Art wanted. He needed elite mental fitness, because your mind is your greatest asset, but only if you train it. Put the reps in, and you'll create a life you love.